everybody, welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. It's Rebecca, and I'm bringing you some trial coverage so you have something to listen to while you're creating your masterpieces. Crochet, watercolor painting, diamond painting, whatever it is you're doing. Knitting, I can't knit. I know how, but crocheting so much faster. I'm just looking at this ridiculous mess that I have on the other side here. I have another board where I keep the crochet Grafgan that I'm working on and all of the spools that go with that, and the cat knocked it last night. So I've got to go clean that up. Yep. So thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about a few cases. The first case we're going to talk about is David Tronis for the murder of his wife, Shante Cooper Tronis. Then we're going to talk about the Gilgo Beach murders, a little bit of an update on that case. And then finally, we're going to end up talking about the beginning of the defense case in the Maya Kowalski versus John Hopkins case. Next week is Charlie Adelson. I even thought, I could get on a plane, go down to Tallahassee, probably cost you an arm and a leg, and just cover that in person. Oh my God, I would love to. If I had a car, which I do not, I would drive down there. And yeah, I would, but I think it's probably going to be at least 2 weeks a trial. Oh, I think they set aside 5 weeks for it, actually, 5 or 6 weeks, because the death penalty is still on the table for him. All right, let's talk about the first one, which is David Tronis. So I brought you some of the testimony. I did not, by any, I've been a little overwhelmed by all of these trials. So I didn't give you all of the testimony that came in the David Tronis case. Let me just update you though with the medical examiner testimony, which is probably the most important thing that you missed. And her testimony was that the cause of death was the strangulation, manual strangulation. She also experienced head trauma, blunt force head trauma, that occurred before she died. So the strangulation is what killed her. Blunt force trauma came first, then the strangulation. Now, David Tronis's defense is, wasn't me. I didn't do it. But none of the forensics support that there was any third person in that house that day, that they broke in, that they set off any alarms. There was no windows. There was nothing taken. Nothing to support a robbery, a burglary, nothing. None of that. So that went to a jury after closing arguments. The judge allowed the jury to start deliberating and continue till they were done. They finished up during the latter part of Wheel of Fortune, because I was watching Wheel of Fortune. Tell him what she's won, Vanna. Can I have an A? Can I buy a vowel? All right. Yeah. So they deliberated for 4 hours and 40 minutes, almost 5 hours, and they came back around 7:30 Eastern time with a verdict. And here it is.
I want to remind everyone in the gallery that it's incredibly important for decorum after a verdict. I absolutely understand that this is emotional for many people and for good reason, but you must do everything you can not to make anything audible, not to make any kind of facial expression when there's a verdict in. And if you don't follow those rules, the deputies will be taking you out right away. And in fact, there can be other things that happen from there. So it's really important everyone follows those rules. State ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense ready?
You are.
And we can bring the jury out. Good evening. It's my understanding you've reached a verdict. Will you hand the verdict form to the court deputy, please?
State of Florida versus David Tronis, case number 2020 CF 12472AO, in the Circuit Court of the Ninth Judicial Circuit in and for Orange County, Florida. Verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. So it says we all, dated at Orlando County, Orange County, Florida, on the 18th day of October 2023, signed by the foreperson.
Any legal reason not to proceed to sentencing?
Not from the state. I can't express one, Your Honor. I don't believe we've got much option here.
All right, thank you. State witnesses?
Yes. Jackson Cooper.
Are you each making a statement? Will you both raise your right hand to be sworn, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Jackson, Jackson, Cooper, Cooper.
James Cooper, James Cooper.
And my understanding, you go first.
Jackson.
Go ahead, Jackson. Just direct your comments to the court.
Your Honor, my mom was the best person I ever knew. She worked a lot, but she never put her family over work.
Jackson, take your time. Hold on 1 second.
Early 2018, she was taken from me and my family. It's like a hole in my heart that I can't fill or fix. She didn't die peacefully. She did not deserve anything that happened to her that night. My family and I have been waiting for about 5 years for justice. I miss her so much. I would have never thought the day before was the last time I would see my mother alive. I miss the times where we would go to Universal, or just the simple times, like walking the dogs or going to the park. She was the best mom I could ever ask for. That's it.
Defense, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Jackson.
Your Honor, when Shanti and I were married, we tried for years to have a child with no success. It was an extremely difficult time for us, and we were about to give up when we got the wonderful news in early 2009 We did our best to raise him together. But as you know in life, it is not without its curveballs and heartaches. And when we divorced, as difficult as it was, one thing we never fought or wavered on was raising Jackson the best we could. He's tall like his dad, but he got his brains, his compassion, and his outlook on life from his mother. And her and I moved forward and continued raising a wonderful son. When this parasite came into our lives, he took something from us, and most importantly from Jackson. And what he took is not replaceable. It is something that I struggle with every day. He lost a good parent. It is still unfathomable to me what he did to her and what he put Jackson through. He knew and he saw firsthand how special their bond was, and he still tortured him and brutally ripped her from this world, our lives, and Jackson's. As I've struggled to understand, to this day, the only word I come back to is evil. Only evil would do what he did to her and Jackson when he had the choice not to do what he did. For every wonderful achievement he experiences, as young children do when they grow up, it bothers me as we experience these moments that not only is she not here because of this parasite, but that I have to think of what he did during these wonderful moments. Awards at school, great report cards, acting in the school play, and I don't know if that will ever change, but it makes me so proud to see him flourish, knowing she had an everlasting impact on him, despite what this parasite did. After today, her name will be spoken every day by someone who knew her and loved her. She will be remembered and thought of every single day because of who she was and is. People will know her, will look at him and know she is inside him and smile. And because of all this, she will never be forgotten, and she will always be with us. After today, this parasite's name will never be spoken again. Anyone who knew him will forget him. He will never be remembered or thought of after today. No one will ever call or visit him where he's going. He will be forgotten, and he will not even be a footnote in this world. If Your Honor does what she is supposed to, do what is right, and that will only be a fraction of what he deserves for what he did to her. Thank you.
Mr. Tronis, anything you wish to say prior to sentencing? I think you just said no, is that right? Then in this case, CF 1812472, the court will adjudicate you guilty. Will sentence you to life imprisonment with credit 1877 days. Impose all the statutory required court cost, fees, cost of prosecution, and state any objection to that being turned to a civil judgment.
No, Your Honor.
So I hope you, poor little Jackson. Oh my God. So we finally know who Jackson is, her son, by marriage to this, what was his name? Jason Cooper. Anyway, he's obviously living with his father and 14 years old. How awful for him now. He's got to grow up without a mom. Jeez. All because of this parasite. But he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Good luck on your appeal. See ya. Okay. Next case, the Gilgo Beach murders. This is the Long Island serial killer or the Gilgo Beach murders, whatever you're known for, or whatever you know it by. This is Rex Heuermann, who was arrested recently for charged with two of many, many murders. There were so many bodies and victims found in this area of Long Island that they are trying to tie to Rex Heuermann. So the press conference yesterday was to announce several witnesses that have come forward and given sworn affidavits regarding Rex Heuermann and linking him to the murders of Shannon Gilbert, who was 24 years old when she disappeared, and her body was found in 2011. He was also linked with Karen Bergala. She was 34 years old, and her body was found in 1996. This went on for a very long time. Now, I'm trying to get a hold of the affidavits so I can read. They're very involved. It was a very long press conference. But suffice it to say that I do want to go through these affidavits and in a little bit more detail with you because it involves sex workers and swingers and yeah, lots of stuff we want to know, right? In any case, so he is now charged with 4 murders instead of 2. That's the summation of that press conference. Now let's talk about the Maya Kowalski case. Now, Maya Kowalski, together with her father and her brother Kyle, are suing Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital for a lot of things: wrongful death, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, pain and suffering. They're asking for not only their pain and suffering, but actual damages and punitive damages. So the plaintiff has finished putting on their case. That's in the books. The next thing to occur was the motions for directed verdict. Now, they're on their, I don't even know what number, amended complaint. When you file a lawsuit, the first thing you do is you send out a complaint. And you can amend that complaint as the discovery progresses. And this initial complaint had been amended so many times to add more and more and more. So I don't even know what this verdict form is going to look like, but the judge said he had reserved ruling on a lot of it, and so yesterday they did not have trial yesterday, but in the afternoon they went live with a Zoom that was just the parties, the judge, so they could talk. The judge wanted to talk to everyone. He said, "I have come to some decisions on the motions for directed verdicts." Now, this is the motion that is made after the prosecution or the plaintiff in civil or criminal case has rested because it's their burden to prove their case. The directed verdict just says, in the light most favorable to the plaintiff, they have not put on a case in which a jury could decide the innocence or guilt of their client. So several of the allegations in the Kowalski case, motions for directed verdict were granted. And I'm going to walk you through which ones are granted and which ones weren't. It's very complicated. But in Florida, in order to recover on intentional infliction of emotional distress, they have this rule called the physical impact rule. And it's pretty antiquated. They need to get rid of it. And the judge has said so. He said, somebody that's above my pay grade needs to take a look at this law and get rid of this physical impact. So here's basically what this law says and why they put it into place is if, for example, you're sitting out in your front yard and you see this horrendous accident. Uh, and maybe bodies are flying and you're never the same, like you just are never the same having witnessed this, but you were not physically impacted by the conduct that caused that accident. So you can't make a claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress because you had no physical impact. So it completely ignores the mental health of people, people's mental health. We need to recognize people's mental health. So Jack has made a claim for post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the emotional distress that he witnessed his daughter going through at being captive in this hospital. So the judge ruled that he did not suffer a physical impact. So he granted the motion for directed verdict as to Jack Kowalski and the intentional infliction of emotional distress. As to Maya, now he said, I'm inclined to deny your motion for directed verdict because I think the case has been made by the plaintiff that she did have a physical impact as a result of being held captive, in this hospital. But I'm going to reserve ruling until you give me some more memos, give me some case law. This is your last chance, and I want it by Sunday at noon. Okay. Then he talked about the billing fraud. He said he was still not ready to rule on that one yet, but the parties could offer further discussion, legal documents, and send me a memo. The poor law clerks are going to be working all weekend to get these memos over to the judge by noon. Apparently, he has given the parties a special email address where they can send email for nights and weekends. That'll get to him. Then there was a charge of fraudulent concealment of the surveillance tape that was done in the EEG room. She was put in the EEG room for 42 hours. And this is a room where they do EEGs. They plug everything into your head and then they watch you for 48 hours to see if you're having seizures. They didn't do the EEG on her, but they put her in this room where she could be watched for 48 hours. But they weren't giving up the tape. So the judge granted the motion for directed verdict as to that tape or to that charge, fraudulent concealment, because he said the plaintiff did not make a case for that. And I don't recall the plaintiff spending much time on concealment of that tape. I mean, we know they didn't give it to you, but, okay. Then there was the Kowalskis are asking for punitive damages for battery. And they cited 3 different batteries that occurred. A battery is anytime someone touches you against your will. If somebody keeps doing this to me and I don't want them to do that to me, it is battery. Yes. So the first instance is when she was stripped down to her underwear and photographed. That's battery number 1. The second instance was when Kathy Beatty took her into the chapel and put her in her lap and was giving her hugs and kisses. And the third instance was when she was being held in the EEG room. So the judge ruled that the instance regarding being held down and photographed and the instance regarding the EEG room, the jury could award punitive damages, that the plaintiff had made a case for those charges, but that he didn't hear enough regarding the hugs and kisses. So he granted the motion for directed verdict as to battery with respect to hugging and kissing that Kathy Beatty did. Okay. So then the defense started their case with a social worker, trained social worker who was working for the Department of Children and Families, but they have so many different divisions and it's really weird. Department of Children and Families is basically outsourced to all these different companies to run. And for example, Sally Smith, the doctor involved here, she worked for Suncoast, whose job it was to administer the Medicare and the Medicaid health care to kids. So this was uh, the person who had been signed as Maya's case manager, and she was in charge of these supervised phone calls and getting anything to Maya from the family, like photos, letters, cards, gifts, whatever. That all had to be approved through her or given to her, and she would send it to someone at the hospital. So many times during this trial, we've heard a phone call that was actually recorded by Beata, not DCF. DCF was not recording phone calls, but this one was recorded by Beata, and she announced it at the beginning. I want everybody to know I'm recording you. But what she didn't do was identify everybody on that phone call. So every time we've heard this phone call, here's what we hear. We hear that, hi, mommy, I love you, blah, blah, blah. And then, how are you, Maya? She says, I'm in a lot of pain and I can't pull up my pants anymore. And her mom says, well, why not? And she's like, I just can't. And then her mom was like, well, how long has this been going on? And then Maya says something that was kind of cryptic. And someone even offered an explanation of what it could have been that she said. And I don't remember what that was. But because what Maya said was cryptic and didn't make sense to the person listening, and the person listening didn't think that Maya's mother understood it either, because she's like, I don't know what you mean. She's like, okay, Beata, I think we need to redirect the conversation now. And whenever we've heard this phone call, we always thought that the person redirecting Beata was Kathy Beatty. Well, this case manager said, no, that was me. That was absolutely me. I was on the phone call. So now we know through the testimony of the guardian ad litem that I can make sure my microphone is still on. I've been having issues with it. So now we know through the testimony of the guardian ad litem that she was on the phone call, that Kathy Beatty was on the phone call, Beata, Maya, and now this case manager was on the phone call. Is anybody else on this phone call? What? Yeah, very, very weird. So she was asked about items that were supposed to go to Maya that didn't go to Maya. She says, everything that was given to me, I forwarded it to Maya. But then the defense or the prosecution on cross-examination said, what about such and such? And she goes, well, when I found out that Maya didn't get those pictures, I resent them. There was also some testimony by Maya about a dress that she wanted to wear, that she had asked her father to bring, that she just loved this dress, and her father brought it, and it was sitting in Kathy Beatty's office. So apparently once it came to this attention of this case manager where this dress was, she asked Kathy to give it to her. Okay. Then we have the next person. Clearly, there's no love lost between the plaintiff lawyer and this next witness. And he asked the judge, even before this witness came in, he says, if she's going to talk about the GoFundMe, then I'm going to bring up the fact that she set up a GoFundMe for her special needs child too. So apparently they've been going back and forth during prior depositions with this witness, which is kind of funny. She just kind of came off as a real smart ass, this witness. So she was trained as a CNA, certified nursing assistant. She has a background as a first responder, what did she call it? Medical, similar to a paramedic, like an EMT, but a step up from an EMT. She called it EMTI, which means she was allowed to start IVs and administer stuff through IVs, which most normal EMTs, I guess, can't do. Paramedics can. But this was in another state, so when she moved to Florida, whatever. So anyway, she decided she would go to work for a place called the Safe Children's Coalition, another one of those companies underneath DCF's umbrella. So the Safe Children Coalition, Their job is to assist with child protection. Her job title was safety manager, and to make sure that they took advantage of all the resources that were available to them, car rides, whatever it was they needed. So she was supervising 4 different visits in October, November between Jack and Maya, and Kyle was along for the ride for those visits. She said that the first visit, when Jack came in, he had a iPhone, iPad, laptop, holy water, a cheesecake, and some other stuff. So she's like, I don't know if she's allowed to have all this stuff. So she calls her supervisor, which I think was that case manager that we just heard from. And her supervisor's like, no, she's not allowed to have any food from home. Oh, let me just backtrack a second. This case manager that was on before. She's the one that set up the phone call parameters. That Beata was not allowed to speak in Polish. That she couldn't talk about anything pain related. She couldn't talk about anything related to her therapy or any of her medical treatment. She was not allowed to talk about that. Those parameters were set by that case manager. So now we get the safety manager in here. And she goes for this supervised visit. She calls the case manager. The case manager says, no, they can't have that stuff. So she has to confiscate it all. She's like, or send it back home with Jack, is what she did. So I think she kept the laptop, but she sent the iPad, the iPhone home, and the holy water home, and the cheesecake home. She not, yeah. Then she talked about how every time she observed Maya had just normal movement and no signs of pain. She said she was playing happy. She was roughhousing with her brother. She was dancing with her arms in the air. She was moving in her wheelchair with her anywhere her little feet could take her. There was one instance where she wanted to change clothes, so she started changing clothes. She didn't ask her father to help her. Her father didn't offer to help her. She didn't show any signs or symptoms of being in pain doing those things. She said she did know what dystonia was. That's where your feet joints lock into a certain position. But she did not observe that on Maya, except for when her dad was talking to her about it. When her dad would bring it up, then her feet would go to turns inwards. She says otherwise, she kept her feet in the regular anatomical position. And she had to throw in there that she thought she was being treated exceptionally well by the hospital staff. They had moved her into a room with an ocean view. She was getting grilled cheese every afternoon, sometimes 2 grilled cheeses. She was really happy there. So on cross-examination, the plaintiff pointed out at least 4 different times where she notated Maya telling her she was in pain. She goes, yeah, she told me that, but I didn't see any signs that she was in pain. She wouldn't wince when people touched her. She, wasn't guarding any of her limbs or, crying or, doing things that people would do if they were in pain. She admitted that she had no training in complex regional pain syndrome, couldn't even say what CRPS stood for. She attempted to see what it stood for, but she had no training in that. So, and then the jury was allowed to ask questions of both these women, very insightful questions. So, just from the tone of the questions, I can tell that the jury did not like these women. They were asking, let me think if I can remember what the questions were. Oh, did you report any of what you were seeing? Or here was one of the questions. Of the stuff that you've said today on the stand that she was doing, where's the video of that? Do you have anything to back that up? Because we know we've seen lots of pictures of Maya, Do you have anything to back up what you're saying, that her feet were in the correct anatomical position, that she was happy and laughing and playing? She goes, no, I don't. I don't have anything. Jury's on to her. Yeah. Because you better believe if they had footage of that, they would have showed it. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to keep on plugging through this testimony. Next week, like I said, is the Charles Adelson case. They'll probably be picking a jury first. So it'll probably be later on in the week that we pick up with the actual trial starts, or even the following week, depending on how hard it is to see the jury, find several people who have not heard of the FSU law professor murders, because they're in Tallahassee. The guy was an FSU law professor. People have heard of this. There have been 2 prior trials. They've heard of it. All right, I got to wind down. I'm all wound up now. All right, I love you all. Have a great Thursday, and I will see you tomorrow in Crafting and Crime Daily. Bye.